the most direct route as the crow flies. And so they were to come through the logging roads on the other side of the river this way. While there, they lost cell coverage. They couldn't text anyone. They couldn't call anyone. And they're realizing they're getting hopelessly lost in the middle of nowhere in rural Arkansas. Well, they kept going, and what else are you going to do? You're going to sit there and wait? So they kept going, and they looked like they had enough signal to make an emergency call. 911, they called them. And as they're talking to the lady, explaining what was going on, she said, well, let me see what we can do. And so she triangulated. It's a little bit scary because if you have a cell phone, they can see right where you are. They used at least 3 towers and figured out where they were on the map. So, okay, I see where you are. Wow. And she said, now go a ways and then call me when you get signal. So they would go, and then when they would get signal again, enough to call 911, she would tell them, okay, you're going the wrong direction. So turn around, go back the way you came and further that way. Or yes, keep going that way, or go a little bit to the left when you can. And she didn't know exactly where all the roads were, I don't think either. To make a long story short, it took about 4 hours. But when they would get some signal, they would get back, and she would tell them where they are and where they needed to go. Communication is crucial. It's critical. Sometimes it's life or death situations. Not always, but sometimes. I'm going to talk to you today about and keep that in mind, we're coming back to it, the not-so-sweet truth about sugar of all things. I've told my family before, I said, I don't have a sweet tooth. I have a sweet mouth. The whole thing, I've liked sweets, so it's only just that I would be talking about this. Oh boy. So I want to first look at with you a little thing about how the food you eat affects your gut. I want to look at this with you, and I have one other of how sugar affects the brain. So listen up as I share these. Hopefully it'll work okay. I'll turn on the pink mic here, or maybe it'll work the other way. We'll see.
Trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi live on or inside of us, and maintaining a good, balanced relationship with them is to our advantage.
Can you all hear this okay? It's not on the screen. Okay. Were there slides on there a minute ago? Okay. Sorry? Turn off my slides. End show. Okay. All right, here we go. A little bit of cartoons, but it kind of illustrates, helps you think about this. On we go.
Together, they form the gut microbiome, a rich ecosystem that performs a variety of functions in our bodies. The bacteria in our guts can break down food the body can't digest, produce important nutrients, regulate the immune system, and protect against harmful germs. We don't yet have the blueprint for exactly which good bacteria a robust gut needs, but we do know that it's important for a healthy microbiome to have a variety of bacterial species. Many factors affect our microbiomes, including our environment, medications like antibiotics, and even whether we were delivered by C-section or not. Diet, too, is emerging as one of the leading influences on the health of our guts. And while we can't control all these factors, we can manipulate the balance of our microbes by paying attention to what we eat. Dietary fiber from foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and whole grains is the best fuel for gut bacteria. When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer. And the more fiber you ingest, the more fiber-digesting bacteria colonize your gut, In a recent study, scientists exchanged the regular high-fiber diets of a group of rural South Africans with the high-fat, meat-heavy diets of a group of African Americans. After just 2 weeks on the high-fat, low-fiber, Western-style diet, the rural African group showed increased inflammation of the colon, as well as a decrease of butyrate. That's a short-chain fatty acid thought to lower risk of colon cancer. Meanwhile, the group that switched to a high-fiber, low-fat diet had the opposite result. So what goes wrong with our gut bacteria when we eat low-fiber processed foods? Lower fiber means less fuel for the gut bacteria, essentially starving them until they die off. This results in less diversity and hungry bacteria. In fact, some can even start to feed on the mucus lining. We also know that specific foods can affect gut bacteria. In one recent microbiome study, scientists found that fruits, vegetables.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. And I am going to go to one other one for you. Specifically, it's interesting to see how what we eat has such an effect on our microbiome, which is so important to all digestion. So keep listening as you see this now about sugar and the brain.
Picture warm, gooey cookies, crunchy candies, velvety cakes, waffle cones piled high with ice cream. Is your mouth watering? Are you craving dessert? Why? What happens in the brain that makes sugary foods so hard to resist? Sugar is a general term used to describe a class of molecules called carbohydrates, and it's found in a wide variety of food and drink. Just check the labels on sweet products you buy. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, maltose, lactose, dextrose, and starch are all forms of sugar. So are high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice, raw sugar, and honey. And sugar isn't just in candies and desserts. It's also added to tomato sauce, yogurt, dried fruit, flavored waters, or granola bars. Since sugar is everywhere, it's important to understand how it affects the brain. What happens when sugar hits your tongue? And does eating a little bit of sugar make you crave more? You take a bite of cereal. The sugars it contains activate the sweet taste receptors, part of the taste buds on the tongue. These receptors send a signal up to the brainstem, and from there it forks off into many areas of the forebrain, one of which is the cerebral cortex. Different sections of the cerebral cortex process different tastes: bitter, salty, umami, and in our case, sweet. From here, the signal activates the brain's reward system. This reward system is a series of electrical and chemical pathways across several different regions of the brain. It's a complicated network, but it helps answer a single subconscious question. Should I do that again? That warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you taste Grandma's chocolate cake? That's your reward system saying, yes. And it's not just activated by food. Socializing, sexual behavior, and drugs are just a few examples of things and experiences that also activate the reward system. But overactivating this reward system kickstarts a series of unfortunate events: loss of control, craving, and increased tolerance to sugar. Let's get back to our bite of cereal. It travels down into your stomach and eventually into your gut. And guess what? There are sugar receptors here too. They're not taste buds, but they do send signals telling your brain that you're full, or that your body should produce more insulin to deal with the extra sugar you're eating. The major currency of our reward system is dopamine, an important chemical or neurotransmitter. There are many dopamine receptors in the forebrain, but they're not evenly distributed. Certain areas contain dense clusters of receptors, and these dopamine hotspots are a part of our reward system. Drugs like alcohol, nicotine, or heroin send dopamine into overdrive, leading some people to constantly seek that high. In other words, to be addicted. Sugar also causes dopamine to be released, though not as violently as drugs. And sugar is rare among dopamine-inducing foods. Broccoli, for example, has no effect, which probably explains why it's so hard to get kids to eat their veggies. Speaking of healthy foods, let's say you're hungry and decide to eat a balanced meal. You do, and dopamine levels spike in the reward system hotspots. But if you eat that same dish many days in a row, dopamine levels will spike less and less, eventually leveling out. That's because when it comes to food, the brain evolved to pay special attention to new or different tastes. Why? 2 reasons. First, to detect food that's gone bad. And second, because the more variety we have in our diet, the more likely we are to get all the nutrients we need. To keep that variety up, we need to be able to recognize a new food, and more importantly, we need to want to keep eating new foods. And that's why the dopamine levels off when a food becomes boring. Now back to that meal. What happens if in place of the healthy, balanced dish, you eat sugar-rich food instead? If you rarely eat sugar, or don't eat much at a time, the effect is similar to that of the balanced meal. But if you eat too much, the dopamine response does not level out. In other words, eating lots of sugar will continue to feel rewarding. In this way, sugar behaves a little bit like a drug. It's one reason people seem to be hooked on sugary foods. So think back to all those different kinds of sugar. Each one is unique, but every time any sugar is consumed, it kickstarts a domino effect in the brain that sparks a rewarding feeling. Too much too often, and things can go into overdrive. So yes, overconsumption of sugar can have addictive effects on the brain. But a wedge of cake once in a while won't hurt you.
All right, there you go. Did you learn something? I knew that'd get you thinking about it. Yeah, it's interesting how food affects the gut, and it's interesting why we want sugar. Why the Lord has helped me, but I know, especially in the past, man, sugared things have been such a draw. And now you see why all of those things are there. And there's a little cycle, not a little cycle, a kind of a sad perpetual cycle of sugar addiction. First, you eat that sugared thing. You like it, you crave it, you want it, and you take it. And then, okay, your blood sugar spikes up, and then your system, and you feel good, yeah, at first, and then insulin. Your body produces insulin to try to get the blood sugar down, and then you're kind of slumped afterwards, and you're feeling like you need something. And so you're craving something else, and you're hungry, it seems, for that, what you're missing now, and you go back to eating, and it's a cycle that continues on and on. So why do we eat what we do? Ecclesiastes 10, verse 17, says, "Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king and the son of nobles and thy princes eat in due season," so at the right time, at mealtime, "and it's for strength and not for drunkenness." Not for the high we get, but for what it's going to do for us to be able to do God's work, God's way, and in His time. Blessed are those as that land that has this happening. Proverbs 25:16, "Have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need." You know, a little bit's okay. Only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit. Make you sick. Proverbs 25:27, "It is not good to eat much honey, so to seek one's own glory is not glory." So it's likening going after all of that sweet stuff as trying to seek your own glory. And then a deeper craving that Scripture speaks of. Psalm 19, 7 through 10 talks about the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. Speaks of the testimony of God and the statutes, the commandments, the fear of the Lord, the judgments of the Lord. And it says, "More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, and sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb." Psalm 34:8 says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good." It's a different kind of high, right? Not just a dopamine high, but maybe dopamine's involved with that too. When you see the beauty of the Lord and you're experiencing it, it's good. Blessed is the man who trusts in Him. Psalm 119, 106, "How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth." And Job even goes on to say, I have treasured the words of his mouth, God's mouth, more than my necessary food. Not just the sugar high stuff, but any of it. That's better than all of that. I want to look at a few quotes with you about the effects of sugar and share a story with you. This is Ellen White speaking of how she had been at some people's homes. She says, I know persons who have become frightened at the health reform and said they would have nothing to do with it because it has spoken against the free use of these things, context, milk and sugar. Changes, I appreciate the balance in the spirit of prophecy. She doesn't say, no sugar ever. Aren't you glad? But certainly the excess of sugar, no. Let it be that little bit, not the main course. I had a friend, he says, I eat my dessert first. Life is uncertain, he said. You can tell where he focused. But it says here, changes should be made with great care, and we should move cautiously and wisely. And then later on it says, sugar clogs the system, especially a lot of sugar. And our food today, compared to some years back, it's amazing the increase in the amount of sugar in just regular products. That you're like, whoa, what, this? I mean, you might be surprised, but probably won't be, of how much sugar's in ketchup, of all things. Or spaghetti sauce, or some of those. But sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. Sugar is not good for the stomach. It causes fermentation, and this clouds the brain and brings peevishness. You know what peevishness is? What is it? Anyone tell me? Sorry? When you're annoyed, yeah, and irritableness, yeah, peevishness. It's like, I'm annoyed at everyone and everything. Peevishness into the disposition. I wished I could have found some dry ice to buy and bring here and do a little experiment kind of with you all. Dry ice is cool. You don't want to touch it with your hands. It's negative 110 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's cold. You'll get frostbite like that, or it'll, quote, burn you with the coldness of it. So you have to wear some other safety, some gloves of some kind, some thick gloves, to then put it in water, and you can see it bubbling out. And it looks kind of like a sugar cube, and that's what I'm kind of going to be illustrating with this. A friend of mine, I actually asked her to send something to me, and I didn't get what I was looking for, so I'm going from memory here. But the main point is the main point, and I hope you... It's kind of a dramatic illustration of what can happen and what does happen to our brain on excess of sugar. But this is about carbon dioxide and dry ice. So Carol Payton, friend of ours, was traveling, I think, back to Texas from somewhere, I think up near D.C. area, and she was taking some cherries, fresh cherries. Rob, you probably remember all the... From Collegedale to Texas? Thank you. He'll keep me accurate. So she was taking some cherries. She was wanting to keep them nice, so she got some dry ice, but it wasn't blocks of dry ice, which lets off the gas slower. It was pellets of it, and so it was really letting it off fast. And she was in a closed-in car, had boxes of them right behind her seat, and then she was driving. But she was starting to feel different, like, what's going on? She was feeling foggy, kind of a brain fog. She couldn't quite figure it out. And as she kept going, eventually she was talking with some friends, and she called a friend and told them, I am not feeling well. I feel bad. And she was feeling very sleepy, the brain fog. Eventually she pulled over on the side of the road, and she couldn't drive anymore. Little did she know, but what was right behind her in those little white cubes was just about to completely take her life. So there she is. She called someone, I don't remember all the details, but eventually someone told the authorities that, hey, we don't know where she is, but she's on this highway somewhere. You could find her, like they did with the other. But they said, oh, we can't do that. That would be invasion of privacy because she's not asking, where am I? Someone else is. Anyway, make a long story short, through something with her son, Mark, they were able to find out where she was. I think it was Find My Friend, actually. And they found where she was, and they sent someone there. She was in her car, basically in a coma. She was in cardiac arrest, and she was so close to death from just those little white cubes in the back that were just on board, but just about to kill her. Interesting. Now, that's not sugar, but it illustrates in a very dramatic way what in small scale sugar does to our minds. And we find sugar in all kinds of things. This is a little graph. You can't see it too well, nor can I, especially on this. I can see it better down there. 33% of the added sugar that our country consumes comes from the largest item there. Well, not necessarily Coca-Cola, but that's one of them. But it comes from soft drinks that have so much sugar. Do you know why they don't taste as sweet as they do? Because there's sodium in there. There's salt that makes it taste a little less sweet, but you still crave it. Then it has the caffeine that is a diuretic, so you're releasing from your body the water, and you're more thirsty because of the salt too, so you're going to keep drinking what's making you more thirsty. It's crazy. It's a racket to make money. And we go along with it so often. Look at this one. Ellen White says, I frequently sit at tables of brethren and sisters and see a great amount of milk and sugar, and on down. Anything that hinders the active motion of the living machinery affects the brain very directly. And from the light given me, sugar, when largely used, is more injurious than meat. Did you know that? You know, sometimes people can say, well, I'm a vegan. Of course, beer is vegan. So are potato chips and Oreo cookies and, other things like that. There are a lot of things that are vegan that we want to say, maybe not. No, not maybe, not. Just not. But sugar in excess is worse than, or more injurious than meat. Interesting, huh? The highest motivation, I love this. So why do we do what we do? So often, I'll stay there for a minute, so often we make choices of what's on the table. Okay, there's an apple, and there's a cookie. Let's see. Cookie, I get more bang for the buck of dopamine. So we can make choices based on just how it tastes and how it makes me feel, or we can make choices based on what's going to be best for my communication with heaven. Is this going to help my communication, or is it going to stop my communication with heaven? Is it going to give me brain fog? Or am I going to have a clear mind to know what he's saying to me? Look at this quote. We should not be prevailed upon to take anything into the mouth that will bring the body into an unhealthy condition, no matter how much we like it. Why? Because we are God's property. You have a crown to win, a heaven to gain, and a hell to shun. Then for Christ's sake, I ask you, will you have the light shine before you in clear and distinct rays, and then turn away from it and say, but I love this, I love that? I shouldn't tell that, never mind. God calls upon every one of you to begin to plan, cooperate with God in his great care and love, to elevate, ennoble, and sanctify the whole soul, body, and spirit, that we may be workers together with God. You want a clear mind to think after God's order. It's all about the mind. How am I? Am I clearly having connection and communication with heaven? Because communication is critical. It's crucial. I think of Jesus here. Christ overcame for us. Christ was our example in all things. As we see his humiliation in the long trial and fast to overcome the temptation of appetite in our behalf, we are to learn how to overcome when we are tempted. If the power of appetite is so strong upon the human family and its indulgence so fearful that the Son of God was subjected himself to such a test, almost 7 weeks without eating, right? How important that we feel the necessity of having appetite under control, the control of reason. Should I be taking this? Should I be doing this? Is this best for me? Will this help me in my relationship with the Lord and so forth? Well, so often, instead of seeing these things as a blessing, we can see them as a curse. The story is told of a lady traveling by herself at night, small car, going down the highway, dark everywhere, out in the country, though on a highway. And as she's there on the highway, going the speed she goes, a truck, a semi, is passing her, and it seemed like maybe he looked down and saw maybe she was alone. And he slowed down and then went behind her. And she thought, well, this is weird. So she sped up some. Well, he sped up too. Then she slowed down, and he slowed down. He didn't pass around her. And she is getting freaked out. She's like, this is weird. So she kind of kept a good speed, and she says, I am going to find the next exit that has a well-lit gas station there. And so she pulled off. She didn't put on her blinker. At the last second, she turned. And that trucker, he turned right at the last second too. Harder for him to do than her. And she pulled into this gas station. She quickly jumped out of her car and ran into the store. Well, when she did, he had stopped somehow his semi, and he had jumped out of his truck, and he ran to her car, and he jerked open the back door, and he grabbed the man that was there with a knife behind her. So often, we have the idea that God's that truck driver on our tail, following us everywhere, trying to get us, take away our fun, take away this or that. And he's the one that's trying to save us from what's on board, and we don't even know it. So, it's your choice. We have a reason to trust and to choose his way. Psalm 84:11 and 12, no good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. If he says, hey, be careful, take it out, get rid of it, man, that's for your benefit. That's for my benefit. It's not to take, he wants to preserve us for heaven. When we get there and say, wow, all of this, we're going to throw our crown at his feet, say, you know what? I don't deserve it, but thank you for providing it. And thank you for not giving up when I resisted you again and again. It goes on to say, blessed is the one or the man who trusts in you. Yeah. It's a blessing to be able to say, not my will, not just what gives me a dopamine rush, but your will be done because your way is so much better than mine. Then the choice is his. But it's your choice whose choice you take. Let's pray. Oh, dear Father in heaven, I just thank you for being a God who cares so deeply and personally for us. Thank you that you don't take no for an answer easily. You don't take that resistiveness and just walk away, but you continue pursuing us. Thank you. And Lord, as we are thinking of this simple thing of sugar and how it relates to us, Lord, I pray that you would give us the courage to find, and the courage and the motivation to find power from you to control our appetite so that it won't control us and turn off the communication with you. So bless us, Lord, to be able to use reason, to be able to know you love us, you mean to do good to us, and we can trust you to do what you say, and it's all going to work out for best. And I pray this, and I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.